Allan, good to see you as always. Welcome back to Popternative.
So nice to be here. Thank you very much.
With Saint-Pierre, I wanted to know because, there's some kind of similarities in certain projects and some differences with it. With this one compared to other things you've done, what was that experience like with you? Like, what was different with this one compared to past projects for you with Saint-Pierre?
I kind of feel like it's an interesting question because, on the surface, cop show, Newfoundland adjacent, is it connected in any way to Republic of Doyle or does it? But in many ways, I feel like it really, truly is different. There's a different format. It's more of a procedural, less for comedy. It has fun elements to it, obviously, because, all of us who make the show have a real sense of humor and like to bring interpersonal relationships, like to bring that sort of light vibe to it.
Yep.
But the cases and the structure of each plot is actually quite serious. And there's a real level of weight that comes with that I think fans of a procedural genre kind of come to depend on. So there's a little bit of familiarity, something completely different. And then, of course, there's the setting that I think is unique and completely different on its own.
So when you were kind of, in talks to kind of be in this and the development component of it, did you feel like it was a unique situation where it's kind of like you said, what's going on, but at the same time, you don't know what's going on? There's unfamiliar territory and familiar territory at the same time? Because I find that interesting that you just said that.
Well, I think that from a viewer perspective, so the first notion of this, the concept of this show, how it came to me was about, you don't want to create something for the sake of creating something. And every time I've tried to pursue that as a creator or as a writer, it's really, it comes off wrong, it doesn't work, or you spend a lot of time on it and it doesn't really pan out. Mm-hmm. And then when you feel like it's not about just wanting to do something, but it's about wanting to do this one thing, if that makes sense,
yeah.
The road is a lot less bumpy. And then if you're collaborating with the right people, which, took me years and years to kind of smooth all of the elements out about that, but that kind of worked out in a really wonderful way. And we're working with some great people on this show. We have a great cast. It just felt right. And structurally, there's something about it that is familiar for an audience because it's structurally a procedural show. There's a mystery of the week. There's a noir BritBox vibe to it. There's a tone to it that's somewhat has a cheekiness, but also has a level of seriousness. And then the setting is really, really different. It's a really different, unique place. And I think our treatment of that place is also probably maybe a little unusual in comparison to what people might be used to seeing.
That's interesting you say that because with the cop show, the procedural, every week there's a different case and everything. A lot of shows, and it's with this one as well, there are, the week-to-week cases where you see certain things and then we don't hear about it, but there's some things and some character developments and relationship things that you see throughout a season of a show. Can you talk about that a little bit, that kind of balance from an acting storyteller perspective? Because I find that interesting, right? There's some things that you have to do as an actor. You're done with it after a certain amount of time, but then there's some things that are still there, that are still going to be there. I'm curious about that.
Yeah, and that's the juice, right? For why I think an audience wants to stay tuned or wants to stay connected to a show throughout a season. It's one thing, I guess some shows are just completely standalone, but I can't really even think of one anymore. I feel like, viewers are sophisticated. They want to be invested in what people are doing and they want to be drawn into those personal stakes. So I think even as actors, that's, it gives you more than just spewing exposition. There's and I think the real magic is from a writing perspective, is you want to be able to tie those personal arcs into the A plot if you can.
Yeah.
If it's organic.
Yeah.
Because then, it drives the plot and then obviously those personal arcs are going to be, they're not all sunshine and lollipops. It's going to be connected usually through conflict. So when you're going in through conflict and you're connecting that to the A plot, you're driving the episode forward and you're driving the audience's engagement, or at least that's how I see it. It's what I don't think there's any hard and set rule, but I usually like to make sure that those things are connected to an A plot, to make sure that they make it into the episode and to make sure that they stay, and an audience sticks around.
And
versus some of those shows where the cousin's introduced, has nothing to do with the A plot, and
then you never see the cousin ever again.
Yeah, or you don't care, or you wish you didn't, and you're
yeah.
A lot of those times, those characters are just not connected to it a driving plot that makes us want to believe or understand the
Mhm.
conflict or care. You know,
I always thought too, some of those shows, like there's so many that come to mind, but it's like you really like a character and you were like, I would love if we could see this character ever again, but they were just on one episode. Like you kind of said, they were like a
yeah.
cousin.
Or they die, you know, and then you're
Yeah,
like, oh
exactly.
shit.
Yeah, exactly. And then you never see them again for sure. There's different ways we watch things. There's that kind of week to week drop, and then there's like the binge drop. I personally also, as a creative, think there's a world for both of them. I just wanted to kind of pick your brain for someone who's been on kind of both sides of it, and even from a viewer perspective, what do you like? I think there's room for both. I think there's room for just binging something, and then but there's something about the week to week drop. What do you think about that specifically?
Well, you almost need a spreadsheet now, don't you, to watch TV? Because you're like, okay, I'm watching Nobody Wants This on Netflix, and then I'm like, okay, but I'm also watching Slow Horses, but Slow Horses only comes every week, so House of the Dragon is there, and then you're okay, well, where am I in the new Dune series? Like, it's really hard to keep track of these shows when they drop week to week.
Yeah.
And Apple's done an interesting thing where they give you two, they get you hooked, and then they make you tune in every week. And I don't know why they do that, to keep you engaged for longer, maybe. But I don't know. There's certainly room for both out there. And then there's the over the air linear television, of course, which is like weird that these subscriber based television platforms are moving to more of a linear based storytelling. It's like everything is old as new again. It's quite interesting and weird.
No, for sure. First time we talked, I think, was about moonshine. Second time was quicksand. Now we're talking about Saint-Pierre. Talk about different kind of worlds that you're getting yourself into, man. Like, I don't know. But I feel like it's all storytelling at the end of the day. But I'm wondering what the mindset or preparation is like when you work on something like Doyle that has the Newfoundland cop component, but is funny at times or a bit goofy or quirky, and then something like this, and then moonshine. Like, do you bring mindsets preparations to pass things to something like Saint-Pierre? They all separate once you wrap them.
You definitely disappear from it when you wrap. Like you can't. I don't. Here's the way I'd look at it. So Moonshine's funny because my co-showrunner and one of my co-creators, Rubina Lord Stafford, and I met on that show. So I owe the creator of Moonshine not just the thanks for that job, but for introducing me and Rubina and suggesting we work together. And then, like, for an actor, you know what's interesting when you're writing a show and you're playing a part in it? I've discovered is that, like, I like to do a lot of prep for a role when I'm acting in it. I really like to. And it's not stuff you play, it's stuff so you can help yourself inhabit, feel comfortable and not feel insecure. So you kind of build a world and a map for yourself and a backstory, and you build I focus a lot on thought about what each scene, what I'm thinking, what I could be thinking. You contradict those thoughts. You know, the way our brain works, and I like to kind of map out what that could be, and not a map that I would follow through in a trajectory, but just anything if I end up in a lurch and I can't access a moment of truth that I can rely on as like a safety net. And then when you get to the floor, you throw those things away. But I spend like weeks and weeks preparing for those kinds of things. But when you've written a show, you've done all that work sometimes for a year.
Yep.
And it's wild because the freedom that's in that is like, you don't have to be self-conscious. It's a lot more work, but you really don't have to worry about, am I prepped for this? Because I am. Yeah. I'm prepped for this world, let alone this character. And I find that super freeing. But when you finish a part, like, I'm not really method or anything. Like, I tried to play with that shit in my 20s, but it's like, it's a waste of energy for me personally. I spend a lot of energy thinking about shit that doesn't matter. And you get into a scene, just like a conversation like this, you got to go with what's coming at you. You can't have a prep plan for it.
Oh, absolutely. I think it was years ago. It was like me, you, and Jennifer for Moonshine. And I remember it's still one of my favorite interview moments of all time, where it was so early, I think, with the time zones. I think you were filming the show. So it was like really early for me. But I remember like talking about like why is it so relatable? Like workplace comedies. And like, I don't know. You were like, well, because people work. Like, people have to work.
You remember that?
One of my favorite moments.
But I wasn't being
No, it was just
tool.
true.
I mean,
It was no, but then you're no. It was funny because your answer was incredible after that. Like you were just saying that because it was like the way I answered it, but you were like talking about the relatability. Like it was a really good answer to the question, but it was just like the way you said it in the beginning. You were just like, yeah, well, people have to work. You know what I mean? And then you were talking about it, and I was just kind of like, oh my god, of course. You know what I mean?
well, the struggles of like something you can identify with, right? It's
Yeah,
like,
no, it was excellent because, but kind of to add to that, the reason there is a question there in regards to Saint-Pierre because it's like, you know, every time I've noticed this in a lot of things that you've been on, there's a lot of characters that are figuring things out and are a bit lost and doing self-reflection. Some characters more than others in a specific show, but I'm wondering from strictly kind of an acting perspective, because you talked about your writing and behind the scenes, but I just want to know from an acting, what's that like for you playing opposite these lost characters that are doing self-reflection and figuring things out? Because is it more fun? Is it more challenging? Because on the surface, they don't know that they're lost from the viewer perspective. Like we're just watching them do their thing. Like, what do you think about that? Because I find that interesting too.
yeah, no, that's a really interesting question because I don't think I ever thought about it like that. So, you know, what you're doing really is you're meeting every time we meet people in real life, like even you and I when we first meet, or even re-meet again.
Yeah.
You're really trying to meet that person halfway to see where they're to. You know, where are they, and what's going on with them in this moment, and what are they bringing to me? And is it me, or is it their own thing? Are they in a good mood because they're happy to see me, or are they just win the lottery? You know, you're kind of going through this little sort of dance we do every time we sort of mingle with a person. Are they excited to be here? Are they sad they're here or whatever? So I think it's more like that when you approach a character, you go through what your thoughts are or what you're thinking. Actually, it's kind of making me think that it's an interesting thing to think about when you're doing a scene, is to think about this thing we're talking about right now. Because there's never a there in terms of what the process is about approaching stuff as an actor. Like you really got to be open to always growing, always being better, always being more truthful. And I wonder if what you're asking me is something I've never thought about that might be an interesting element to bring into that. Like not something hard and fast, but just something to kind of be like, okay, well, what are they going through?
Yep.
Okay, because that is listening too, right? You're there to listen and sort of see where they're to and meet, you know, as they say, where you're at, like kind of meet them halfway there. And I don't know if I've ever sort of put that into the layer of prep for myself. I've always kind of been like, from a more selfish perspective of like, what is it my character's going through? Because you can't control what another person's going to do.
But also you're in the mode when you're acting too. That's the thing too, right? Like being conscious of the audience member happens after as well, right?
Yeah, and I mean, think of the audience at all, and ever, certainly not.
Yeah.
But you know, to your question, it's like coming across people who are working something out or something. Anyway, you just kind of opened up. I'm not really answering your question because I don't really know the answer.
No, this is awesome. I mean, I've been having my producer hat and my writing hat on, Alan, for a while, so I think about these things now. You know what I mean? So, like,
yeah.
But I can't wait for people to see Saint-Pierre on CBC in the new year. Alan, so great chatting with you as always. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
You too, buddy. Thank you. Always love talking to you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.